Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this week's Keeping an Eye on the Geopolitical Ball with me, Jamie Shea, Senior Fellow at Friends of Europe. This week, I want to turn my attention to Africa. Just last weekend, the African Union, the organisation that brings together the 54 states of Africa, held its latest summit in Addis Ababa, where the African Union institutions are based. The meeting elected Senegal and its president, Macky Sall, as the next chairman for 1 year of the African Union, replacing Felix Tshisekedi of Congo. Now, in Senegal, this happy nomination was largely overshadowed, as you would expect, by the euphoria of Senegal winning the African Cup of Nations. But once that euphoria dies down, Senegal and its president will have a tough year ahead in trying to sort out the numerous problems of Africa and making the African Union more effective. The organization is now celebrating this year its 20th anniversary, replacing the rather decrepit Organization of African Unity, which unfortunately tended to shield dictators, not really intervene against military coups in the continent, and turn a blind eye to numerous human rights abuses. Now, to give it its full credit, the African Union has done a better job here, establishing a secretariat, permanent institutions, for example, a peace building commission, an African Union standby force. It's intervened also alongside the UN in Somalia to drive the Al-Shabaab Islamist organization out of Mogadishu. It's established an African free trade zone, for instance. And just this week, it opened its doors to a group of Ethiopian NGOs that brought complaints of human rights abuses in the Ethiopian conflict to its Human Rights Commission. But just like in the 19th century, Europeans like to talk about Africa in terms of three C's, which was spreading commerce, civilization, and Christianity at the time. Today, we have to talk about three new C's when it comes to Africa. These are conflicts, COVID, and climate change. And these new three C's are going to be the test of the Senegalese presidency. First of all, conflicts. Well, fortunately, there aren't any interstate wars going on in Africa at the moment, but there are some simmering conflicts where the African Union needs to be active. For example, between Morocco and Algeria over the future of the Western Sahara, where fighting has once again broken out after a 20-year lapse. Or, for instance, between Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia over dam projects in Ethiopia, which could lead to the disruption of water supplies along the Nile. But the continent is plagued by internal conflicts. We've seen this in Mali, in Central African Republic, Burkina Faso. We've seen this now in Ethiopia with the war between Tigray and the rest of Ethiopia. We see this with the ongoing drama in Libya over the transition to elections and a government of national unity, and in places like Sudan, where there have been two failed attempts to form a military civilian government. We know from academic research that whereas 46% of international conflicts are resolved, this is unfortunately only true of 20% of civil conflicts. And here the African Union has to step up to the plate by mediating, for instance, by condemning coup d'etat, by condemning human rights abuses, by transferring war criminals like Omar el-Bashir in Sudan to The Hague and to the International Criminal Court of Justice. The next issue is COVID, where unfortunately only 7% of Africans have been vaccinated. Unfortunately, we have seen too many examples of disinformation against vaccines such as AstraZeneca, which could have been rolled out in their millions in Africa by now. We've also seen inadequate vaccine production in Africa. Only 2 production plants were there when COVID broke out. China and Egypt last week agreed to build another one, but the health infrastructure across Africa in terms of vaccination production, distribution, access to health care, detection needs to be improved. The African Union has an excellent Center for Disease Control and Prevention, which has lobbied lobbied hard for more vaccines, but this pandemic will not be the last, and the African Union has to make health infrastructure a priority. Finally, climate change. Unfortunately, Africa tends to be the continent which is most affected by the impact of climate change. Just this week, the World Food Programme raised the alarm concerning the situation in the Horn of Africa, where 3 successive failures of rainfall has led to a prolonged drought, exposing 15 million people to starvation, and the World Food Programme called for $330 million of aid. But we've seen these trends of extreme weather events play out across Africa, and this year, fortunately, the COP27, the International Meeting on Climate Change, which was, of course, in Glasgow recently, is going to be in Egypt at Sharm el-Sheikh. So this is an excellent opportunity for the African Union to put the spotlight on African climate change challenges and call for more assistance, humanitarian assistance, climate refugees, help with agriculture, to help the continent build its resilience against the inevitable shocks of climate change. So this is a big agenda ahead. The African Union has proclaimed the goal of 2063, 100 years after the end of colonialization, to have an Africa at peace with the conflicts solved and with an integrated market, something like the European Union on the African continent. This is not an impossible ambition, although it's a tough agenda. And if it's to get there, the African Union mustn't waste its time, as it did in Addis Ababa this past weekend, on secondary disputes as to whether Israel should be allowed to attend an observer or not. There are much more serious issues, and let's wish President Macky Sall of Senegal all the best in getting all of his colleagues to step up to the plate. Thank you for watching and listening today, and I look forward, as always, to engaging with you next week. Bye for now.